Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Institute of Economic Affairs, I would like to extend a warm welcome to the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China, His Excellency Liu Kong, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Ngoma, our speakers, Professor Tan Xiaoyan, Deputy Director, Carnegie Xinhua, Dr. John Kache, Director of Research, IEA, Dr. Samuel Dapa, Director of Governance and Administration, IEA, distinguished participants from government, academia, business community, development parties, and CSOs, joining us online and in person. My fellow colleagues here at the Institute and the various media houses, the purpose of this symposium is to highlight China's contribution to Africa's infrastructural development and to explore how to reshape the current China-Africa relations in a way that will benefit all parties. Without saying much, I will hand over the microphone to our moderator, Mr. Alfredo Kansi, a journalist at Media General and a member of the Ghana Journalists Association. Thank you.
Very much. This is the realm to me, administrative assistant, as executive assistant IEA. I appreciate it. I was hoping that when he mentioned my name, he would address me. Thank you so much. So, welcome. This is an engagement that promises to be very forward-looking and progressive because of where we find ourselves as a continent and indeed as a country, and the needed cooperation and collaboration to spur the kind of development that we all desire, given the face of this pandemic. So, on behalf of the IEA, we welcome you once again, and thank you very much for joining us. This moment, we'll take the Zoom remarks by His Excellency Liu Kong, who is the ambassador of the People's Republic of China in the Republic of Ghana, joining us by Zoom now to give us his remarks. Ambassador, please, you can unmute and kindly give us your remarks, sir.
Good morning, everyone, and especially Honorable Thomas Mumboba, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, and also the friends from IEA, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I'm very glad to attend the Symposium of China-Africa Joint Research and Exchange Program hosted by the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA. The theme of today's symposium is focused as the vehicle for infrastructure development in Africa. First of all, on behalf of the Chinese Embassy in Ghana, I wish to express my warm congratulations on the successful convening of the symposium and a heartfelt gratitude to IEA for its considerate arrangements. When conducting operations with Africa, China follows the principle of sincerity, real results, amity, and good faith, and upholding justice while pursuing shared interests. Enhancing unity and cooperation with Africa has always been high on China's diplomatic agenda. China and Africa fought shoulder to shoulder in the great struggle to win independence and upheld dignity. We have partnered with each other in pursuit of economic development and better lives for our peoples. And we have supported each other on issues that are important to our core interests and are of major concerns to us. Despite rapid changes in the international landscape, China-Africa friendship has remained rock solid and as strong as ever. In recent years, the practical cooperation between China and Africa in various areas has made substantial achievements. Even under the COVID-19, China has remained Africa's largest trading partner for 12 consecutive years. Direct Chinese investment in Africa remains steady, and over 1,100 cooperation projects have maintained operation, providing strong support to economic recovery in Africa. Solid progress has been made in China-Africa cooperation under the Belt and the Road Initiative. 46 African countries and the AU Commission have signed cooperation agreements with China under this initiative. As of today, over 85% of the 8 major initiatives announced at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Beijing Summit in 2018 has been implemented. 60% of the $60 billion supporting funds has been dispersed or earmarked, and a large number of cooperation projects have been launched or completed. All of this provides a strong buttress for Africa to achieve economic recovery. Development assistance is an important part of China-Africa cooperation. China has provided economic and technical assistance in various fields to 53 African countries and 5 regional organizations, including the African Union, implemented more than 2,500 various projects, including more than 130 hospitals and clinics, and over 170 schools, 45 sports venues, more than 300 agricultural cooperation projects, and a large number of infrastructures, such as railways, highways, bridges, airports, and electronic power. Dispatched more than 200,000 aid experts, trained over 600,000 local talents for Africa, and sent 2,100 medical team members to 48 African countries, provided 220 million medical services, strongly supported the national independence and economic and social development of African countries. China and Africa have jointly responded to the COVID-19 challenge through mutual assistance. When COVID-19 broke out, African countries and the AU gave China firm support at a tough time during its fight against the virus. A support we will never forget. President Xi Jinping has been deeply concerned about the evolving COVID-19 situation in Africa. He called for holding the extraordinary China-African Summit in June last year and made a telephone conversation with 11 African leaders, which is a true testament to the special bond between China and Africa, who reach out to each other during trying times. Since the beginning of 2020, China has provided various anti-pandemic urgent assistance to 53 African countries and the African Union in response to African needs. First, China urgently provided more than 120 batches of much needed testing kits, ventilators, masks, protective clothing, and other anti-pandemic materials to Africa. Secondly, after the Chinese vaccine was approved for emergency use this year, China provided vaccine assistance to 47 African countries and the African Union. Thirdly, the Chinese government has sent anti-pandemic medical team to 17 African countries. Chinese hospitals has been paired up with 45 hospitals in 40 African countries. And China has trained more than 20,000 African health workers. The construction of the African CDC headquarters was started ahead of plan. These concrete efforts gave true meaning to the China-African community with a shared future. Fourthly, China has actively participated in the G20 debt service suspension initiative. We have signed debt suspension agreement or reached a similar understanding with 19 African countries and canceled the interest-free loans due to mature by the end of the 2020 for 15 African countries within the framework of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation focus. At the UN Security Council, open debate on peace and security in Africa, addressing root causes of conflict in post-pandemic recovery in Africa last May. We jointly launched the initiative on partnership for Africa's development. This initiative fully demonstrates the importance of boosting China-Africa coordination under new conditions to uphold equity and justice. And it represents our joint contribution to advancing global cooperation and multilateralism. Ladies and gentlemen, China and Ghana have always been good friends, partners, and brothers. Politically, Ghana is among the earliest countries in sub-Saharan Africa to establish diplomatic ties with China. In September 2018, His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo paid a state visit to China and held bilateral talks with President Xi Jinping. The two heads of state delineated and blueprint the future of China and Ghana relations. After the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, China and Ghana united as brothers and supported each other. Ghana voiced its support to China since China first reported the pandemic last year. At the same time, China ardently helped Ghana fighting the virus by providing a large amount of anti-pandemic supplies and medical equipment. The first charted fight containing anti-pandemic supplies donated by the Chinese government to Africa chose Ghana as its first destination. All these facts have proved that the political relations of our two countries is at the forefront of China-Africa relations. The economic and the trade exchange between China and Ghana has been flourishing. China is Ghana's biggest trading partner and foreign investment source. In 2020, the balance increased instead of reduced despite of the pandemic. In the first half of 2021, that means the first half of this year, the bilateral trade volume amounted to $4.382 billion, a year-on-year increase of 23.8%. The China invested airline company, power plant, steel company, ceramic company, cement factory, tomato juice factory, and a paper diaper factory make significant contributions to creating jobs and promoting developments in Ghana. 6 lots of the Sino-Hydro projects are forging ahead remarkably. China-aided projects, including phase 2 of the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Hu, Jamestown Fishing Port Complex, the annex building of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the regional integration are making steady progress. The people-to-people exchange and the cooperation between the two countries have developed in depth. The Confucius Institutes were established at the University of Ghana and the University of Cape Coast, and a Chinese section was set up at the University of Ghana. More than 10,000 Ghanaian students are studying Chinese in Ghana. At the same time, over 6,500 Ghana students are studying in China, ranking the second among African countries. A new session of FOCA will be held in Senegal at the end of this year. China will put forward a new initiative to deepening China-African cooperation, including trade and investment, agriculture, climate change, health, digital economy, and etc. China will release a report on its investment to Africa, encouraging more private companies to invest in Africa and promote Africa's industrialization and localization. And we have provided necessary assistance to effort. zone. Sixth place, to promote intra-continental trade and Chinese investment in Africa through cooperation in infrastructure, connectivity. Ladies and gentlemen, looking back, China and Africa have forged forward hand in hand, looking into the future, guided by the vision of building a community with a shared future for mankind. This is put forward by Chinese President Xi Jinping. China and Africa will embark a new journey or a new era of friendship and cooperation. Finally, I wish the Symposium of China-Africa Joint Research and Exchange Program a complete success. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Much, please. Thank you very much, His Excellency Khan, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China in the Republic of Ghana. Really appreciate it. And just running through, enumerating all these projects of support and investment that China is making in Ghana despite the impact of the pandemic. And also on the continent, as a matter of fact, if you we're expanded in the course of this conversation just beyond the borders of this country, China's presence and influence has grown to unprecedented levels for the last at least 70 years gone by. When from the 1950s you had over 18,000 African students from some 50 countries being given scholarships to go and study in China. They came back with stories of Chinese movies and other things that they came to share with us and the experiences that they had over time. And that experience and the presence of China on the continent has grown astronomically over the last 70 years. And that's the kind of conversation we'll be having during this symposium. And I applaud you that when we get to that point where you will also contribute to the conversation on the way forward, and with respect to this collaboration that we're having in terms of development support with China, we'll come forth with your views as well as we go on. This is the IEA China Symposium on the theme FOCA, a new paradigm of development cooperation. The topic we're focusing on today is FOCA, a vehicle for infrastructural development in Africa. For journalists here, FOCAC is for the China Africa Cooperation Forum. It is a platform established by China and friendly African countries for collective consultation, dialogue, and a cooperation mechanism on developing countries as well. So that is going to be the basis for this conversation as we go on. A number of issues that is enumerated and talk about the political and diplomatic relations that Ghana has with China. The better person to talk about it than our guest of honor for today, the Honorable Thomas Bomba, who's the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Affairs. Please, let's put our hands together for him. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
His Excellency, Lord Wu, Ambassador of the Republic of China to Ghana, Dr. Nonke Pachi, Director of IEA, Dr. Samuel Akwa, Director of Governance and Administration, IEA, Professor Young, Deputy Director, Carnegie Chingua Center for Global Policy, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is a distinct honor to be among you today and a privilege for me to address this gathering of distinguished participants from government, parliament, academia, the business community, development partners, civil society organizations, and the media at this symposium. I wish to commend the Institute of Economic Affairs for organizing this very important symposium under the theme Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCA, as the vehicle of infrastructure development in Africa. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by acknowledging the excellent relations between Ghana and China. Indeed, July 5th, 2021 marked 61 years of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Ghana and China, one of the first of such relationship in Africa. Over the past 61 years, Sino-Ghana relations and cooperation have been strong, warm, cordial, and have evolved over time to encompass areas of cooperation such as diplomatic, political, economic, trade, investment, technology, security, cultural, education, and people-to-people exchanges. During the period, the two countries have achieved a great number of successes, both at the bilateral and multilateral level. High-level visits, intensive interactions, and exchanges between Ghanaians and Chinese leaders have become frequent and fruitful. Similarly, trade relations between our two countries have seen a remarkable increase, resulting in China being the largest trading partner of Ghana, while Ghana is the seventh largest trading partner of China in Africa. At the multilateral level, our country continues to cooperate to ensure the creation of a peaceful, just and equitable international order. Achievement we have chalked over the years must serve as a motivation for our countries and people to continue to consolidate, deepen, broaden, and elevate our relations, especially within the context of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, the Belt and Road Initiative. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, since its inception 20 years ago, FOCA has provided a unique diplomatic mechanism to promote dialogue between China and Africa, while at the same time facilitating development, a common political and economic agenda which advances constructive South-South cooperation of mutual benefit of both sides. The FOCA deliberations have brought Africa and Chinese leaders closer together and crafted shared vision for policy of the nations, expanded commercial interactions, and common prosperity. China has progressively allocated $5 billion, $10 billion, $30 billion, and at the recent summit of FOCA in Beijing, China allocated $60 billion to African countries for socio-economic development, with emphasis on infrastructure development. Ghana has benefited immensely from Chinese government support, and assistance over the years. Chinese-funded infrastructural projects are visible everywhere in Ghana, from energy supply and generation, infrastructure development, in roads, highways, building construction, mining, and water and sanitation, among others. I therefore wish, on behalf of the government, the people of the Republic of Ghana, to express our sincere thanks and appreciation to the government and people of China for their continuous support towards our development efforts. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ghana have actively participated in all FOCA activities and summit, and is looking forward to do so once again during the 2021 FOCA summit, which is expected to be held in Dakar, Senegal, later this year. This year's summit comes at a time when the world is confronted with the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic, which started as a health crisis, has evolved into a global security, environmental, and economic catastrophe, threatening to roll back development gains made over the last few decades. The pandemic has also reinforced the need to join forces and to foster collaboration in order to speed up the recovery from the negative socio-economic effects. In this regard, I call on the African-Chinese side to introduce new healthcare and COVID-19 related initiatives to prioritize healthcare and the rebuilding of the post-COVID-19 economies of Africa, including Ghana. As you may be aware, the government intends to expand health infrastructure through Agenda 111, which entails designing, construction, equipping, staffing, and of new hospitals, at least in each district in Ghana. I therefore call for China's support in this regard. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wish to conclude by taking this opportunity to reiterate Ghana's commitment to the ideals of FOCA. I also wish to assure that Ghana will continue to work earnestly and concert with other African countries and China toward the successful implementation of the initiatives that will be announced at the 4th FOCA summit in Dakar, Senegal, the advancement and mutual benefit of our countries and people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Administration, Honorable Thomas Obokba, thank you very much. Talking about joining forces, fostering collaboration in this period is extremely important for the continent. We're getting to the first session where we'll focus on infrastructure construction and knowledge exchange. How can China and Africa improve the quality and sustainability of their cooperation? That is the first conversation we're going to be having. Infrastructure, construction, and knowledge exchange. How can China and Africa improve the quality and sustainability of the cooperation? We'll first have a Zoom presentation of this one, and then we'll move into the discussing segment as well. Professor Tang Yang is the Deputy Director, Canadian Tsinghua Center for Global Policy, joining us via Zoom with a presentation on this infrastructure construction and knowledge exchange. How can China and Africa improve the quality and sustainability of their cooperation? Prof, Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. Can you hear me clearly?
It's very clear now.
Okay, great. And I have sent my slides. Could you please share the slides on the screen? Or if you cannot share the slides, then please make me the host so that I can share the slides from my side. Yeah. Is it possible for you? Okay, yeah, and now I can share the slides on my side. Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you very much again for the kind invitation, and it's really a pleasure to take part in this important discussion. And my topic is to combine infrastructure and knowledge exchange together. And my argument is this kind of combination can help China and Africa improve the quality and sustainability of their cooperation. So first, just a background. We see the China and Africa in general. So the ambassador and also the minister, they talked about the China and Ghana relationship before. And here I just give a picture of the overall cooperation between China and the continent. So we see, especially in trade, it has been growing steadily for the past 20 years. And China's trade with Africa today is more than Africa's trade with the US, Japan, France, and the UK combined. And especially in construction sector, so namely the infrastructure construction, China has taken more than 60% of Africa's entire construction market in 2019. And actually, for the last 2 years, this trend is not stopping. And China's FDI stock in Africa has also been increasing very rapidly. And in fact, even in the COVID pandemic, I know that still a lot of Chinese investors, they are very interested in investing in Africa. And then in addition to the economic side, then the FOCAC also forges strong political economic ties. And that's because the Chinese government and the business, they very clear that Africa has growth and opportunities. So on the right side, we see this picture of the increasing population of Africa. That's the red line. And it expects to catch up with the Asians' population in maybe 40 or 50 years. And also the population is very young, and that gives the dynamics of the continent. So everybody in China, we have this expectation that Africa is already at the vanguard of rapid industrialization. But currently, Africa also has a lot of underdeveloped industries. So that also gives the opportunities. And the investments in infrastructure, agriculture, and also service can facilitate this growth. And tapping these opportunities do not only help Africa, but also mutually beneficial for China. And especially then the infrastructure is a very important sector. So this is a picture of how China is building the different railways, roads, and also pipelines across the continent. So you can see they start from some different like east, west, southwest, south, also the north. From different directions, and maybe in the next 2 or 3 decades, these different parts they can be connected and to become a cross-continent network of roads and railroads. And in addition, then the energy part, power plants, that's also another very demanded part of the infrastructure construction. So China, as well as the telecommunication and other facilities, these are all built by China. So it's a quite holistic approach from all the sides. But in the infrastructure construction, there's a big challenge because some rumors said, okay, Chinese companies, they bring only Chinese workers to build this infrastructure so that Africans can profit just a little of this construction. But because Africa has a lot of undeveloped and unemployed local talents, so African countries are very concerned of building the African human resource side by side with this hardware construction. And so that I have done quite a lot of research during past decade to investigate that part, namely the employment and training related to infrastructure between China and Africa. So my findings indicate that first, Chinese firms, they create a lot of jobs for African workers, and especially in manufacturing and construction. In fact, in manufacturing, the local employment rate can be as high as 95%. And in construction, the average local employment rate is around 85%. That's because in a construction sector, you need a lot of machine operators, and sometimes it needs time for training. Therefore, at the beginning, maybe the local employment ratio is not so high. And also in the Chinese companies in Africa, language barriers and skill gaps, they are the major obstacles for the development of local talents. And of course, it is acknowledged that most of the jobs in the Chinese companies, they are low and semi-skilled, and that's actually an aspect to be improved. I'm going to talk about how to improve it in the following. And yes, another question is also about the wage. People may also say that in China, Chinese companies pay low wages to African workers. And my findings suggest that wage actually depends a lot on the skill levels, also on job tenure, work experience, sector, and location. So I have done a comprehensive survey to find out the facts of this Chinese employment and training and wages, and in comparison to other foreign companies, as well as to the local companies. So here is a part of the finding in Angola. Why in Angola? Because Angola, they have a very strong tie with the Chinese construction companies. They borrowed more than $10 billion from China to build railroads, roads, and also schools and power plants and agricultural projects during past 20 years. So they have more than 100 Chinese companies in the construction sector. And with the survey, actually, we find out this is a survey about the wage. So in the wage, it looks like the Chinese actually, maybe they started for the unskilled workers. Actually, the Chinese starting pay is smaller, lower than the other foreign companies and also the Angolan local companies. But that has a condition because the Chinese companies, they often work in the remote areas, while other foreign companies and other Angolan local companies, they work in Luanda, the capital. So that also make a big difference because in the capital, actually the wage certainly is higher. So actually then when we look at the picture at the right, then we find out, in fact, for the semi-skilled workers, the Chinese companies, they actually put their wages even higher than other foreign companies and the Angolan companies. So this actually give a very interesting aspect of Chinese companies' employment pattern, because they will give higher wage when these workers are skilled. So this is actually important finding. So that means Chinese companies, they put a lot of value, attach a lot of value on the skilled workers. Another additional note is in addition to this nominal wage, Chinese companies also offer some like accommodation, food, or micro loans to their local employees. So these are some extra benefits. So this makes the Chinese wage actually quite similar to the local, to other like foreign companies and the local companies. But actually, very important takeaway is the skill is very important, highly regarded in the Chinese companies. And then how to fix the skill gap and utilize the local talent. So this is the Chinese government and the Chinese companies. They need to work together with African government and African societies together. So as actually the ambassador already mentioned, Chinese government offer a lot of aid programs and get the African students to study in China. But in these construction sectors, there are also orientation programs for the African local workers, and also there's the training of language skills for African workers, like how let them know the Mandarin, but also train the Chinese expats how the English so that they can communicate more smoothly. And then the skill building with the work, that's also important part. And then besides that, then the government agencies need to set up oversight mechanism, checking for bad labor practice. And there's another finding I did with some British scholars together on the provision of training in Chinese construction company in Ethiopia. So we find the dark line is the Chinese, and also again in comparison with the other foreign and the local companies, we find that actually the Chinese training in construction sectors is very high, right? More than other foreign companies. But yeah, some local companies maybe they have a higher, but that also has some like conditions, yeah, different. Different context, but in general, we see the Chinese they provide trainings just quite similar to other companies, if not more. And but however, in this training process, we find some obstacles. So the first is the conditions between China and Africa vary greatly. So some training like computer skills or some IT knowledge trained in China, the workers, they find it difficult to implement in Africa because of this hardware and the related infrastructure is not strong enough to support the most up-to-date technology. And another big question is the staff turnover rate is very high. So a lot of trained workers.
Okay, please, just a quick announcement. Owner of car number GS252Y, GS252Y, kindly attend to your vehicle immediately. Car number GS252Y, please attend to your vehicle immediately. Prof, you can continue.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so another thing is about the staff turnover of the Chinese companies in Africa. That's very high. That's also a bigger problem because when you train the workers, then they may leave very quickly, and then the training effort is wasted. And then another related to that is that some of the effects of the construction projects are difficult to sustain. Famous example is the Tanzania-Zambia railway. So when it was built, then actually the operation and maintenance becomes very burdensome, and so that also actually hinders the program to upgrade and to train the workers continuously. And so therefore managerial knowledge is required. So this will bring to another question in this infrastructure construction, how to improve the quality. Namely, we need a managerial, so this management knowledge, it's as important as the technology and the skills, because the infrastructure, that's a very critical part of economic development. It's not just a commodity, like some the Washington consensus, they may say, okay, you need a free market. But in fact, we find out in the Africa's history, when you really liberalize and privatize all this infrastructure investment, then private businesses, they cannot afford or they are not willing to invest this. So therefore, that's why the Chinese investment is important, because that combines commercial interest and public interest together. But even when China is good at building infrastructure, but how to sustain and maintain this infrastructure, that requires the local workers and especially local managers to keep these projects running. So this is my some final notes on how to improve the knowledge so that the infrastructure construction can continue and then move forward. So first, then we need to increase the portion of local staff in management positions. Second, then we need to facilitate more communication in the strategic decision making. So not only in this unskilled or semi-skilled positions, but we also need the supervisors. And then the efficiency-oriented Chinese management should be combined with sufficient cultural and social discussion with the local workers. For example, below this on the right bottom, this picture is the Chinese style of very efficient and strict training. But whether the local people can accept it or not, actually the Chinese should discuss with the local managers together and maybe do some adjustment and modification. And the fourth point is that we need more scientific and systematic project management and information exchange. So namely, introduce the latest IT technology and the latest management skills to improve the management of infrastructure projects altogether. Okay, these are all my discussion for the infrastructure and the knowledge transfer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please, round of applause for Professor Kang Daniel. Thank you very much. And he spoke on this topic, infrastructure construction and knowledge exchange. How can China and Africa improve the quality and sustainability of their cooperation? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, now the discussion is open to you, and then also your thoughts, your contribution, your questions to Prof is going to stay on a while to also answer some of the questions that we would have. And let me put it on the 30 minutes down. Foreign affairs have to leave for the equally important engagement, but he also has his reps here with us. We obviously get any responses to the ministry. But the discussion is open now. If you want to put up any question or any contribution, please put up your hand and the microphone will be given to you. So please, there's a hand here, right there. So kindly get the microphone. Prof, are you there with us still? Professor Nyanyo?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, I'm with you.
So the first question is going to come to you, but let me just set the ball rolling. You talked about the challenges, that slide on the challenges that you have identified with language barrier, low and semi-skilled jobs, and your wages in the construction sector. You talk about depending on the skills level, the job turnout, the work experience, and the socio-economic status, the sector and location in which the work is. The last but one slide, you talk about increasing local staff in management positions. How specifically are you going to do that? Is there any specific strategy, a plan that you intend to roll out to have a lot more of the locals in management positions, which would directly impact on the wages that they are paid, because you say that the criteria you look out for is the level of skill of these persons, and then you just decide on the wages to pay that. That's the first question. The second one, please. Yes.
So Michael,
The microphone will make it.
Michael, there, I'm representing the Ghana Institution of Engineering.
Thank you, sir.
On the issue of knowledge exchange, first and foremost, it's important to accept or know that in all countries throughout the world, knowledge is protected, and professionals are required to ensure that they are licensed to practice in that country. Here in Ghana, we have the Act 819, which is the Engineering Council Act. We also have the LI 2410, which is supposed to ensure that any professional who comes into this country to practice as an engineer or do any engineering practice is licensed to practice in this country. Unfortunately, we have not done well with the enforcement of this law, because as I speak, the Engineering Council is not in place.
It's not in place.
Yes, the Engineering Council is not in place. The board is not in place. So this has been the problem over the years, because the Act itself was promulgated in 2011. And the LI came into effect only last year. So almost 10 years after the Act, the LI that allows the law to be practiced itself takes another 9 years. These are some of the challenges within our own country. Now, for us as Africans in Ghana to benefit from the issues, it's important that we look at the metrics that we use to measure issues of infrastructure. Over the years, what we have simply done is to simply say, oh, we have built this, we have built that, without asking the question, what is the service delivered by that infrastructure? So over the last 35 years, for instance, the road quality from here to Kumasi and from here to Kapadi, from here to Kumasi improved, but the time travel has increased. So what has been the benefit of that infrastructure to the country? These are essential metrics that we as a country need to begin to ask ourselves, so that we ensure that we get the social and economic values from this infrastructure. Else, all that we are doing is throwing away money, because it will not be sustainable. We will be debt-ridden and cannot sustain and pay back those loans. So it's important that we begin to look at the metrics that we use to measure infrastructure that is put up in this country. That's my own
Thank you very much. Really about the metrics. And then Professor Yang, during the presentation, made a point about having a correlation between the commercial interest and the public interest in the execution of these infrastructure projects. Any questions? Prof, if you can respond to the first question about.
Okay. Yeah, just let me double check whether I understand the questions rightly, because the sound is not perfect. So the second question is about the measures for infrastructure, right?
Yes, we're talking about the metrics for decision making on the kind of infrastructure that, for instance, Ghana was generally a concern about what we look out for in deciding which infrastructure projects to execute.
So really, it's not a question to him directly.
Yes.
For us to internalize.
So it wasn't a question to you. The second was a contribution to the conversation. The first question was about the processes you're employing to ensure that locals actually are skilled enough to get to the point where they get to part of management decisions, or the locals being part of management to take managerial positions which directly impact on their wages, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And so your first question about the process to get the managers, right? And yeah, I think that's two excellent questions. And first, for the low skills workers, to gradually improve. I don't think the managers, they will really start from the very low, because that's related to the education level. Usually this entry level workers, they just they only have a basic middle school education, and they maybe just get through the position of supervisor or skilled workers after 5 or 8 years experience. While I think the managerial level local managers, actually the Chinese companies, they should have different training programs. So they should build more collaboration with the African universities. Actually, I know there's a cooperation between Ghana University and the Chinese Higher Education Institute. They train the MBAs and also engineers. And this actually can become the potential managers for this foreign investments. And so I think this actually, the lower level, this is in a company, this increase actually should be divided into different levels. So the skilled technicians is one part, managers, that should be another part, and maybe the very sophisticated engineers, that can also be another category. Actually, companies like Huawei, like ZTE, they have a big demand for this kind of programmers, and also this tech specialized engineers. That's another part. And then the second question is on this knowledge metrics, on the metrics for infrastructure. But I think it's mainly for local, I think the question is directed to Africans. So I can just give some my thoughts, my suggestions on think about the infrastructure. It's not only first, it's of course this cost of construction. That's one part, and Another thing is it's how to use that, the utilization. That's another part. Then we also come to the long-term sustainability. That's another important part, and as well as the related functions like the training effects, and also whether it can drive the social and industrial co-development. That's also important. So infrastructure, that's a very big topic because it requires billions of dollars investment. So it's critical for a country's overall development. So when we evaluate that, we need a different criteria. Combined. Okay, so that's my answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Another microphone as well. Let me acknowledge those who have joined us on Zoom. And I'll come to you, please. Frederick Montgomery, Charles Adams, Olivia Braco Hiapa, and Samuel Mano, and then also a former director of the Institute of Economic Affairs, and now the chair of the Electoral Commission of the Republic of Ghana, Jim Mensah, also joining us Zoom. Madam Jim Mensah, thank you very much. So, please.
Yeah, my name is Igamoa, the director for Center for Asian Studies at the University of Ghana. I found the presentation by the colleague in China quite interesting, but a bit too optimistic, and a bit too sweet, if you like. We also do research on infrastructure, Africa-China relations, Africa-Asia relations. And I was expecting in that very brilliant presentation some take on the issue of skills transfer, but I didn't find it. But what my own research shows, and indeed we just published a fascinating book that had scholars from all the 5 continents, 60 years of Ghana-China relations. And in that, we do some fascinating work on infrastructure. Now, when you look at the issue of Africa, China, and infrastructure, I think one of the key missing points in the change is at the level of, if you like, the management processes, where, for example, engineers, architects, and the rest of them come into the picture. My view, and that in conjunction with that of other scholars, who are fundamentally, in many ways, use a critical kind of approach, is that we think that the Chinese monopolize that area. And that is where the high-end skills aspects, in many ways, is missed. So, for example, when the National Theatre was being built, the expectation obviously was that there will be Ghanaian architects in that mix. And luckily for me, my in-law is a Ghana's first female architect. And so I have insider information on this. There was no Ghanaian architect in that process. So the Chinese architect, I think his name is Tang, if I remember, his company then designed that building. But what we have is basically a Chinese architectural icon sitting in the heart of Accra on one of our foremost roads, the Liberation Road. The Liberation Road captured our independence movement, and struggle. So the symbolic value of that road, which then opens, stretches down onto the independence flag. Then you have a national theater that speaks nothing of our architectural notions and imprints and the rest of it, right? So there are big symbolic questions. Infrastructure is not just building a road and building a bridge, right? The symbology of that particular work It's important. And I think that the Chinese must begin to address that. Because they are living fundamentally, what we are seeing is this cultural hegemony at the level of, buildings and other constructional outputs that we need to look at. Now, this same problem has been repeated at the University of Health and Allied Sciences. And I think you guys, you should get this book. I introduced what I call the diplomacy of architecture. I have pioneered that area. I did the first work on Chinese constructions in Africa, right? So there are big problems we have to look at. The other question that affects skills transfer is Mandarin and the way in which it's more or less deployed in territories like our own. And I went around a lot of the Chinese construction. And what you see is Chinese signages where the Mandarin is on top and English is below. And that's not proper. I mean, we speak English. And so the English should come first before the Chinese or the Mandarin. I speak Mandarin, yes, so I get a lot of these things and I understand. But you have to understand all of it. The other thing is, usually when it comes to the manuals and the rest of them, they tend to be Mandarin. There's a classic case of that, for example, in an industrial project that took place in Tanzania. Okay, so these are my preliminary comments. I'll come back to more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. It's loaded about 3 or 4 questions. So I'll have Prof. Asa take the final, move on to the next, please. Professor Yanyo, are you there? You can respond to, yes.
So I think it was a comment, right, rather than a question.
Yeah, so yes.
Yeah, so and I glad to know to know that book. So the 60 years between China and Ghana, so that already dates back to 1960, maybe right after the independence of Ghana. And I think first it just shows China and Ghana has a very long history of solidarity and friendship from the President Nkrumah and Chairman Mao and Premier Zhou Enlai. They already had a very good relationship, and President Nkrumah was very famous in China as well. And another point I want to make is actually the construction between China and Ghana, they have some continuity. So like you said, the National Theater, actually I visited the National Theater, just saw this old monumental work, and also some very old projects in 1970s, 1980s. But on the other hand, I also would say the relationship has also been evolving. So the market-oriented cooperation has become the mainstream. The reason is for China, this is China's own development experience. When you have the market dynamism, but not totally depending on the so-called free market. So this is the Chinese understanding of development. So that's why we have the government, state-owned enterprises, as well as private enterprises, all working together to develop this infrastructure. This commercial interest and public interest, this combination is especially notable in the infrastructure building, as well as education and the knowledge sector. Okay, these are just my final comment.
Okay, question.
Right. Thank you very much. My name is Mr. Fatu, and I report for TV Africa. And my question to Prof. A very splendid presentation on this important topic, infrastructure construction and knowledge exchange. How can China and Africa improve the quality and sustainability of their cooperation? Our question to Prof is that from where he sits, we have Chinese operating in Ghana who have caused a lot of damages to our natural resources, be it our river bodies and our forest reserves. From where he sits, when he sees these kind of things, how then does he think that will go a long way in promoting and ensuring quality sustainability of our operation? And how worried is he when he hears matters of Chinese perpetrators cause a lot of harm to the Ghanaian natural bodies? Thank you.
Okay. Prof. Yanyo?
So let me just double check. You mentioned which which case? So you mentioned the river body. So
Essentially, the concern is about the involvement of Chinese in illegal mining operations in Ghana.
Mining operation, yeah. So this gold mining, right? Yeah. So this is the sector, the mining sector. That's actually quite a special part. So that's why when I'm talking today, my topic is mainly on infrastructure part. While the mining part, especially in Ghana, this illegal mining, that's mainly done by the private businessmen. And often many of them, they are not under the, even the supervision of the Chinese government. And so, but that's a complicated question because also a lot of this illegal mining, they are collaboration between the Chinese private businessmen and the Ghanaian owners. So, but I haven't done very like in-depth research on that issue, although I know that's a problem. But I think this requires more like in-depth investigation on the facts. Yeah.
Prof. Thank you very much. I will take the yes. That particular one. Yes. So there's a brief question and then I'll take the last question.
There's a comment. You know, my colleague on the other side, I don't think that we should rationalize the guarantee problem by just saying that it's collaboration between private Chinese businessmen and Ghanaian. There's Chinese technology involved. The Shanghai that are dredging our waters. It's like having a Ghanaian with Ghanaian technology dredging the Yangtze, the Changjiang. I mean, I think this is very, very serious. And the Chinese government and the Chinese embassy should understand that there's a moral responsibility that they hold because they are Chinese nationals involved. They are connected to the Dalu. They are connected to the mainland. You know, so I think this is one of the questions that is undermining, in my view, Ghana-China relations. And we need to look at that.
Oh, thank you for that contribution. Let's take the final question and we'll move on to the next session, which is on Chinese infrastructure development in Africa. We're now narrowing it down to a case study of Kenya and Zambia. And the presenter will tell you why. Final question.
Very much. My name is from Ghana National Congress. My question and comment. When you look at the infrastructure, like sources of interest, but emphasis has been on other long or less with the not looking at the effort. So my concern is, will it be possible for us to look at the break and transfer? For instance, the Chinese contractor can come to Ghana, build a road infrastructure, and then operate it in terms of financing through the issue of tickets and then road tools to finance the project.
Okay, thank you. Professor Yanyo, if you could respond to that about the build, operate, transfer mechanism that you employ, and he's asking about a further management of the project or infrastructure that you put up to such a point where it finances itself before you transfer to the Canadian ownership. Prof.
Pardon, you may respond to the question on which bridge? I didn't understand the last part.
Okay, Prof, the volume is a bit hollow, but essentially what he's asking about is the mechanism of the build, operate, transfer, BOT, that you employ in China in executing infrastructure project on the continent. He's asking if it covers the management of the infrastructure that you put up.
Okay, so management in BOT, yeah. And what's the question then? So
that if you manage it to generate, for instance, roads, if you construct roads, give an example of roads, to put up road tolls, generate the revenue to finance the cost of the project.
Sorry, because it has a sound, I actually do not totally understand the question very well, but usually maybe then in this road, the management, you have the local, you have the Chinese banks and also the Chinese construction companies involved. If in the BOT, then you may have the Chinese also running the operation for a while. But in fact, I know maybe not in Ghana, but in Kenya, when they are doing the BOT project, they also have a training agreement, and they train the local managers for maybe several years. Does that answer your question?
Now, he says somehow, assume that you obviously not satisfied with it, but yes, we would have to move to the next session. Thank you very much, Professor Tang Jiayuan. Please, round of applause for him. Thank you very much. And he's going to stay with us as well for the next session. So the next session is on Chinese infrastructure development in Africa, a case study of Kenya and Zambia. Let me acknowledge the questions I'm seeing on Zoom. We'll get to it as we go on as well, the presentation. But this presentation on this topic is going to be done by Dr. Samuel Dakpa, who is the Director of Governance and Administration at the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA. Please, let's put our hands together for him once again. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning once again, everybody. I'm Samuel.
Thank you very much. And let's upload the people sending us the messages and then also the questions on Zoom. We encourage you to continue doing so. I would get to it during the next set of questions and discussions for the answers as well. So,
okay, thank you. And once again, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the IEA Dialogue Hall. And at this time, we want to go through and presenting to you Chinese infrastructure development in Africa, the case of Kenya and Zambia. But before we go into the case study, I just want us to have a context at the timing of China's recent contact to Africa. We've heard that the contact traced back to independence and even prior to independence. At the time, the latter time after China came back to Africa, was a time that there were major shifts at the global scene. There were significant changes going on at the global level. We had the collapse of the Soviet Union. and we have a unipolar system where America hegemony was at the epic. And then again, we have Africa trying many of IMF models, which ended up in failure. And African countries, we did this, there were retrenchment, many people were retrenched from their jobs. And because of the hardship through the IMF problem, most parts of the continent was thrown into conflict. At that time too, there was a formation of the European Union. And during that formation of the European Union, African trade partners were exiting the continent because the continent was no more attractive and they were trading with European Union. So during the tail end of the 20th century, the last end of the 20th century, that was the picture. And at that time, the Chinese economy was then expanding. And as the economy was expanding, they needed resources for the raw material, they needed resources for their factories. They also needed oil and gas to power their factories. So they came as partners at that time. And their coming meant that there was some sort of win-win to Africa, because when our partners were turning their backs on us, they came in. And as they came in, our partners didn't go entirely because there is another competitor on the block. And that gave us, expanded the option for Africans. And around that time, to the year 2000, China came up with the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, known as FOCAC, which we are looking at. And FOCAC became an engine or a platform or a vehicle through which China was having its relationship with Africa. Every 2 years, there was a meeting, and it gave African leaders some exposure to the world class of diplomacy. So how diplomacy should actually take place. At that time, many African leaders didn't know much about that. So that exposure to the global world was one good thing to Africans. Then another thing is that it's also their coming, and also this fora or forum did something unique on the continent and to also the elite of the continent, in the sense that the elite began to exercise some sort of agency. What they couldn't do in first initially with some of our allies, they were able because they saw China on the block, who has a need for resources, who has a need for energy or like oil and gas to fuel their factory. And Africa also had a need, one of which is infrastructure. And we all know that Africa's infrastructure deficit is huge. It needed about 170 billion annually. That is the gap. If you divide by the 55 countries on the continent, it brings you to about 3.1 billion for each country average. So Ghana has to inject about 3 billion into infrastructure each year. And we didn't have the capacity, we didn't have what it takes to do some of these things. And because of the inadequate infrastructure situation on the continent, we were losing so much resources. Post-harvest and harvest losses. Most of our crops are perishable. We didn't have the factories to process some of these things. So conveying them from the hinterland to the urban centers became a challenge. So we were losing about 40% of resources through these post-harvest things. Apart from that, because of inadequate infrastructure, it was also adding to the cost of trade or doing business. Even as of now, sending something from Europe to Ghana is cheaper and easier and faster than from other some of our sister countries. At times, there are certain things you need. It has to go back to Europe before coming to Ghana. You may need something from South Africa or Kenya or so. It has to go to Europe before coming to Africa. So we lacked the infrastructure, and it was costing us so much. Even the African continental free trade area that we are happy about, its success depends on a very robust infrastructure. So the issue of infrastructure is very key to the success, and that is a gap we have. And that is where we and China are trying to partner and see where we could be. So the other thing that we can touch on before we go to the main case studies are that through the engagement, FOCAC, and also other things that Africa-China leadership have been engaged in, there has come to a situation where Africa-China has signed a partnership in infrastructure development. The aim and the goal is that by 2063, we will have a world-class integrated infrastructure on the continent, where from Cairo to Zambia or Zimbabwe down there or Cape Town, there will be some integrated high-speed train and also seaport, said that Africa, trade among Africans can work well. And that was a single commitment on the part of the continent to close its infrastructure gap. So we have about 4 decades, 42 years to close that. And we have to work and work fast and hard. And this thing is also traceable to 1970s, something that took place in East Africa, where there was the Zambia or Tanzania-Zambia Railway, which was built by China. And could you, maybe my slide, can we look at slide 6 now? I understand because of it's better I don't share, but for now, my slide 6, let's look at that quickly. Or we can go ahead and share, because if we didn't get even a good view, at least people will see what is happening. Slide 6, yes. There's a picture there. Yes. Okay. Can you put it at PowerPoint? Okay, no problem. So if you look at the map there, you could see on the eastern part, the Tanzania-Zambia railway, and also on the western part, you could also see that which runs through from Zambia to Angola, a seaport. So these are some of the infrastructure projects that, okay, if there is that technical problem. So on your view, you can be chewing on that. I can let that be on whilst I go on with my. Okay, now I want us to now move on to the main case study. But just view this. The earlier presenter showed us some of the things that is being done. But here, because of the case study, I want us to just look at this. Then as we go into the individual case studies, I want us to focus on something that is going to build on upon to make it connect into the other part of the continent or other parts or other countries. Now, the first case I want us to look at, which is Kenya, we want to look at Nairobi Mombasa Railway Project, Nairobi Mombasa Railway Project. And that project is still ongoing. And its aim is to connect Uganda, Burundi, and South Sudan. Uganda, Burundi, and South Sudan. And the main one, Nairobi Mombasa Railway, the project has ended. But during its heyday, Kenya exercised some agency and negotiated that 40% of resources or materials that they need should come from Kenya. Then again, it also created about 300,000 jobs for Kenyans.
Hold on a bit for me. If Professor Tang Janyo is still on, if you can kindly disable you being the host and hand over the host to us so we can control the Zoom from here. Professor Janyo, please disable. You will make the host so you can share your slides. Kindly disable it so we can have control of the Zoom. Thank you very much.
Okay. So let me back up a little. So I'm talking about the Nairobi Mombasa Railway Project, which has completed, but it has a future plan. That future plan is that it is going to be connected to Uganda, Burundi, and South Sudan, and also even to Cape Town there. When they were constructing this, Kenya exercised agency and negotiated that 40%, at least 40% of the material should come from the locals. So they should take the material from local. They also negotiated that the labor force, most of them should come from Kenya. So in that way, they exercised some agency. They did not allow China only to dictate their pace. And these are some of the things we need in our cooperation with the Chinese. Then more international sports center. The cost was about 52 million US dollars. Kenya decided to take about 48%, close to 50% of the cost. And that was said that China don't do everything, give us about 50%, 52%, the 48% of the cost, we will bear that cost. And what did China do? China levied taxes, raised taxes, and also look for the rest of the money through local sources. So these are some of the good things our government need to do as they negotiate or they enter into some of these infrastructural development or projects with China. Now, if you look at the Kenyan situation, the coming of the Chinese and also in the construction, it brought in some good things. We heard of the skill transfer, which we couldn't get. Maybe you can get me to slide 8. Okay, so we quickly look at some positive on the domestic players or at the domestic front. So one good thing is that it brought about some integration of the economy, especially even the regional economy, regional economic community that they have. It helped the economy to some extent to be integrated. It also brought about technology transfer. Chinese technology was made available and said that Kenya did not just adopt it, but they adapted it. They adapted it to suit their own needs, But there were negatives. Some of the negative is that it exposed Kenyan seeding industry, like young industries, infant industries to companies, infrastructure companies to foreign exposure. And that exposure became said that some went out of the market. And in this vein, even Stancom Limited, a very formidable construction company in Kenya. Maybe you can ignore it if you're having that challenge. You can ignore it. I have it here. So a formidable construction firm which was serving that sector or the eastern part of Africa. It was not only serving Kenya, but you can have Tanzania, Zambia, Burundi, Congo, and even Angola. They were even going there. Because of the competition, they were calling for protection. So the competition, they were exposed to unfair competition, and that affected their business and many things. Now, on the part of Zambia, the case of Zambia, Zambia represents a challenging scenario. One good thing is the Tanzania-Zambia Railway, which is still in operation. And we know Zambia is a landlocked country, and it didn't have a sea, just like Burkina Faso in the northern part of Africa, Ghana. So they are our northern neighbors. So whatever they need, they come to Ghana through our harbors and they take it there. Here, Zambia was fortunate to have that Tanzania-Zambia railway to cut the goods they needed from the Indian Ocean to their land. And now they are also having another one from Angola, which also cut goods from the Atlantic Ocean to Zambia. But that is not the whole story. They also have the Chembe Bridge project, which is also to connect Zambia to Democratic Republic of Congo. Then there is also Benguela Railway, which is connecting to Angola. That one, we saw it in the picture I introduced first. Now, let's look at some of the positive sides. Somewhere during the relationship in the year 2007, China canceled some of the debts that Zambia owed it and promised about $800 million more for China in various, for Zambia in various projects. In recent terms too, in 2019, it canceled about $22 million contracted somewhere in 2007. These are some of the good and the positive things we can see. It's also that China's presence in Zambia led to the first political transition where there was a change in government. We know that Michael Sata in 2006 mounted a xenophobic attack on China because Chinese corporations, Chinese businesses were affecting Zambia. He didn't win. In 2008, he did the same thing, he didn't win. And even in 2006, when he mounted a xenophobic attack, even the Chinese ambassador threatened that if care is not taken, they will close up relations with Zambia. But it didn't end there. Eventually, he won in 2011 because of the presence of China. He promised to, at the end of the day, do away with China. But when he won, he made a U-turn. And the reason he said is that China has no replacement. And he also promised that when he wins, he was going to actually cancel all the projects that he previous government has contract that the previous government had gone into negotiated with China. But that didn't happen. What happened is that immediately after he won, he was able to negotiate, but it's even told, it's documented that there is a Chinese embassy which renegotiated their contract, said that Zambia was having double the royalties they were getting in the previous deal. So when Michael Sata won, they quickly changed the things, and Zambia was getting 100% more of what it was getting initially. Now, you know, bad stories travel very fast and far. And there are some bad stories about the Zambia case. And that has to do with a debt trap. And this comes as a result of non-transparency, the issue of transparency in the contract of those loans and other things. As of now, it's been challenging. We don't know much about how much Zambia owes. Its citizens are demanding that, and the government has not been very transparent, and that has caused their jeer. But it's not only China that has given loans to Zambia. Between 2012 and 2015, the government issued 3 euro bonds to the tune of about $3 billion. So it's not only China, but the effect is that because there is no that transparency, it has sunk China's, the investor confidence in Zambia, in the Zambia economy. And most of its mines, or mining sector is in the foreign hands, in the hands of foreigners, which is not the best. Also here in Ghana, mention any mining sector that is wholly owned by Ghana. Unfortunately, that is the case of Africa, and that is something we have to fight hard and win, because most of our mining sectors are in the hands of foreigners. And also its national broadcaster, ZNBC, is allegedly taken over by China because it is in debt trap and is not able to pay. Now, quickly, recommendation, how to make the relationship better and how we can all win. The first thing that Africa and China has to do together is that there should be more transparency. There should be more transparency. And if there is transparency, getting into debt trap will not be a problem. It won't happen. So there should be more transparency. Also, China needs to learn from its experience and improve on some of these areas. Its policy on non-interference. So what is happening in my country, China says, I'm not going to interfere. But you look at the Zambia case some time ago in 2006, the ambassador intervened saying that if you continue to mount up xenophobic campaign against China, I'm going to close diplomatic relations with China. So when he had them, they are able to come out and do this. So we want them to be minded, and also to what is wrong, they should point out that this is wrong. And non-interference, I think that policy should be relooked at. Its labor relations and human rights records has to be also improved upon, and its customer friendliness. At times you see some Chinese products, they say no warranty, no return policy. So some of these policies, which are not the best, have to be dealt with. And finally, to conclude, I would say that as of now, the literature out there shows that both sides are learning, and they are learning to greater extent. Now, there is concern about transboundary projects. So it is not only within Ghana or wherever. So some of the projects we are seeing, Zambia, Kenya, Uganda, and what have you. So these are some of the things which are important and it has to be encouraged. Chinese lending now is captured in IMF program, which is good. So we want that transparency. And if other partners are there as referees, is there for our interest as a continent. So when we have the US representing, we have others coming in, I think it should be embraced and it should be encouraged. And our relationship with China should be more transparent than it is today. Then there is also some reduction in Chinese workers. Its own economy has improved. Labor cost is better now. So Chinese workers coming down to Africa has reduced because the economy has improved, which is a win-win for all of us. Areas of concern now is that there should be more regional focus. So Africa, like when it comes to negotiation, we should have a joint negotiation between African countries and China. It shouldn't be one country. Then also, in terms of our governance about contracts, we should be more transparent in the contract. The opposition should be made aware of. At times, the opposition comes in and it's like, oh, the opposition is more inquisitive. It's for our good. So that award of contract, value for money should be taken care of. Then I think the last thing I have to mention is that we need to also invest in innovative local mechanisms, like we saw in the case of Kenya, where it says now, I want 48% to be sponsored by me. 40% of materials should come from Kenya. I think these are some of the things we need. And finally, we should focus on most productive infrastructure to maximize benefit. Because we heard about the metrics of essential metrics. And this essential metrics has to do with the value of the infrastructure. So the infrastructure should not be in ceremonial things. The things that are have economic value. So I end my presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samuel Jacob. Please, let's put our hands together for him. Once again. Also, governance administration via IEA appreciated, and the value for money, social impact of the project. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Now the discussion is open. Questions, contribution, please come in, you put up your hand. The microphone will be given to you. Mention your name, where you're coming from, or who you're representing, or the institution you're representing as well. But it's very important to think about the difference in what pertains in Kenya, or what happened in Kenya, and most parts of the continent, because the Kenyan situation where they were able to exercise some powers or demand based on their rights as a sovereign state to have a certain percentage of locals employed in the various projects that are awarded or executed by the Chinese. You don't have that present in most of the countries on the continent that China is making infrastructure inroads in. Did your study go into why governments, most governments of the continent, are not able to leverage on that, but in partnering the Chinese to demand the mutual benefit of both parties in certain contracts that they engage in for the Chinese to execute sustainable development projects in those countries? Find out what the challenges are that you identify. Study. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Hadia Hamlet from the Convention. Thank you very much, Dr. In fact, I like the presentation. Why? Because I think as Kenyans, something that you are telling us that we are not doing. That is why we are not benefiting from what whatever relationship that we are having with China. Because if you have a situation whereby you are going to negotiate for a loan and you go empty-handed, I think every discussion will be taken, or all suggestions will be taken by the one who is going to do what, give out this loan. I'm very happy that the ruling party's chairman is currently sitting with us here, and then he sits in the cabinet. I'm sure he's taking some notes, because it is very, very important for us as Ghanaians and for that matter Africans, when we are going out there to look for loans or maybe infrastructure development, we shouldn't go as individual countries. There, your strength is weakened. I'm quite sure it's because of the kind of relationship that there is between Angola, Tanzania, Zambia, and Burundi. That is why they are able to negotiate with China to have those railway thing. So for me, it's not too late. But my worry is about this 2063 that we want to achieve.
Agenda 2063.
Agenda 2063. Why? Because even if you look at the women activists, when we're talking about gender parity, it's even in the UN documents that by 2023 we should have gender parity. When we started struggling from Nkrumah's era about what to do to empower women, and now if we're talking about infrastructure, and we're thinking about 2063 agenda, so I want to know what is in this 2063 that Africans are so much in love with that we cannot call a spade and say no. This negotiation that we are entering into, this project that we want, like Doctor said, if we want a structure maybe in Accra, it should look Ghanaian, and for that matter, something like Accra-ism or something like Accra, then Ghana. If you look at the structure, you say, oh, this is Ghana. Now, the laws that we go, I want to ask, don't you pay for it?
All right.
Are we not going to pay? So why shouldn't we have the majority say? And my last point is moderator, please. It has to do with the labor cost. If you're talking about maybe technical know-how, engineers, and what are you're bringing them from China because you don't have that skills in Ghana. I'm not sure as for the laborers who carry the food, you don't have them in Ghana. But you have the majority of the coming from China.
Right.
That is not right.
Dr. will respond to them, and let's take that. You called out the Wilfred Clay. He said, chairman of the NPP is we are already on the political parties represented here as well.
My name is David. I'm from Little.
Right.
And in your presentation, it was a brilliant one, but also expecting to hear she said, I mean, labor skill knowledge exchange, and that in their case, I didn't hear on it. So, but then it's like, and I could also bring it here to Ghana. Knowledge exchange, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's final. Patala?
Yeah. Useful, interventions all around. But I think that fantastic, useful presentation I just want to kind of calibrate the discourse a bit, or if like try to set something like scorecard was not invented by the Chinese. It was the Africans who brought up scorecard. The idea came from the Madagascar ambassador in China. She was the one who brought up the idea and sold it to the Chinese. Indeed, my information, showed, but the Chinese were not even interested, right? So we have to get the history right. And that brings me to what the CPP, Madam, raised. We have to change the narrative. The Chinese are not giving us gifts. We put in money. So how can we just sit down and we say it's Chinese aid? And in any case, this agency he talks about, the Buida, President Kufuor made sure that a chunk of it was from Ghana's resources, including cocoa. You know, so we should not allow the Chinese to run and present us as beggars who are simply taking their aid and therefore reproduce the same Western imperial order. You know, this is something that we should be careful about. And so these are the
respond.
Okay.
Just briefly.
I think most of them are not questions and they are some sort of sharing their ideas and things that our leaders have to focus on. I would say that the issue of agency is very important. Like he said, we are not, the laws have to be paper. So they are coming, allow us to exercise agency. Let us know if and exercise is the law. And this is the fora, one of the fora for us to do some of these things. So we have to articulate our view, what we want. We should tell our lawmakers and our leaders, political leaders, that these are some of the things we need. Then the issue of not going as individual countries is very important. Because if we go as individual countries, our strength is not that. And also, you see, at times Chinese also are looking at the kind of risk they are taking. Because most of the countries that go for Chinese loans are countries that when they go to the international market and also Western partners, they will not be able to get those loans. So if they give you those loans, it means that the interest rate is going to be high. So but if we come together as a body, we are able to command strength and we are able to speak and demand what we need. So, and also many countries, like if you look at this case, these two case studies, Zambia and Kenya, they present different situations. So you can see that Kenya has something that Zambia doesn't have. So if even these two come together, they can do something better. So that is what we need. All the continents, we need to come together and negotiate with China.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to have the third discussion session. No, we're not the third one. So you still around there. Thank you. So for the third session, which will have a discussion as well. The third and final presentation will be done. But before that, please, if the coffee break is going to be here, we're not going out. They'll bring it in. But for my colleague journalists, right after if you're taking your speeches as well, yours will be handed to you. So kindly stay in here. The refreshment will be brought to you.
Now we are putting the satellite on focus as part of our mandate, which is to promote a public discourse on important policy issues. Our doors are always open to all, especially our development partners who may want to collaborate with us to highlight issues of mutual interest. Now, over the past 15 years or so, China has demonstrated a strong commitment to forge development cooperation with Africa. In the process, China has increased its investment in Africa substantially. But China's FDI stock in Africa is reported to have totaled over $100 billion in 2019 and contributed over 20% of Africa's economic growth. It is also remarkable to note that China has investment presence in about 40 of Africa's 54 countries. Now, as a demonstration of its role as a new development partner for Africa, and also to show its commitment to that cause, China, in October 2000, initiated a forum on China, the FOCAC, at a ministerial conference in Beijing. Now, the objective of FOCAC is to promote economic and social development cooperation between China and Africa in the context of South-South cooperation. Further, in September 2018, at a summit held in Beijing, FOCAC laid down a comprehensive framework for Chinese development cooperation with Africa. China renewed its commitment to assist Africa to utilize its resources and capacities to catalyze the continent's development. Now, this development was important since sitting on vast amounts of resources, Africa has not been able to harness this development potential. Now, the hope is that FOCAC will not only supplement overseas development assistance that Africa is receiving generously from the West all these years, but also to address some of the pitfalls that have been identified in the literature that have been associated with ODA. Now, the FOCAC framework comprises several key components, including general economic cooperation, infrastructure development, energy and natural resources, agriculture, food security and food safety, industrial development, health and medical care, education and human resources, science and technology cooperation, investment, trade, and finance. Now, these initiatives are being implemented in various forms in African countries. The fact, however, is that there's not enough public awareness of these important issues, as I noted above. So, part of the purpose of today's symposium is to help educate the public about what the initiatives entail, how they are being rolled out, and what the potential benefits are to Africa. And today, we are focusing on the infrastructure initiative. Now, we recognize that all the FOCAC initiatives are key for Africa's development. However, infrastructure is particularly important to the extent that it cuts across many other sectors such as transport, education, health, energy, water, industry, communications, and technology. Unfortunately, Africa has a huge deficit in infrastructure, which constitutes a drag on the continent's growth. The infrastructure plan envisaged under FOCAC is expected to contribute to address the deficit, and in particular, aid Africa's post-COVID economic recovery. Now, the disruption of production and supply chains by the pandemic has exposed the vulnerability of African countries, particularly in securing essential equipment and other logistics, as the countries lack the infrastructure for local production of these necessities. The FOCAC infrastructure operation plan entails several key components that are key for the post-COVID recovery and sustenance of African economies. Now, Professor Tan earlier ran us through some of the specific projects as my colleague has also done. Now, I want to focus on some of the key aspects of the FOCAC infrastructure plan. But I don't know if this presentation should have preceded the case studies presented by my colleague. because I am going to take you through the principles in the plan. And he has told us how whether these principles have been applied or not. So I am just going to take you through what the focal principles are. Infrastructure plan. Now, under the plan, China and Africa aim to pursue efficient and high quality projects. That's what the plan says. Now, economic and social benefits of the projects will be a priority. Now, we know that there's considerable inefficiency and waste in executing African infrastructure projects. The costs of the projects are often inflated, with the benefits accruing to private individuals at the expense of the state. Therefore, if the focal plan is to give attention to efficiency, quality, and economic and social benefits of the projects, then it will be a step in the right direction. Now, the focal plan envisages mutually beneficial cooperation in the planning, design, construction, operation, and maintenance of the projects. Again, these are the principles. If you go to the ground, as my colleague discussed, the question is, are these principles being applied? Now, African countries will be involved according to the plan at every stage of the process, thereby ensuring that their interests are fully taken into consideration. So when our colleague, are you from the university, you said? Yes. You seem to be saying that there have been all kinds of projects which don't seem to meet. They don't even look at it, and then they don't meet our priorities and so on. Now the question that should be asked is, does that be imposed on us? And don't our policy makers, our leaders have a say in determining what kind of project that they want constructed? That's the question that we ask. Because the plan says they will be involved at every stage of the process. So you expect that their interests will be fully taken into consideration. Now, the focal plan aims to ensure there is a good governance of infrastructure projects through best financial practices and effective oversight. Now, this approach, if followed, will enhance efficiency and lower costs of the envisaged projects. This way, the usual abuse of development funds by African governments should be minimized. But even more importantly, the plan intends to ensure sustainability of African debt. This, it says, will be achieved by encouraging African countries to utilize their own resources to the extent possible. This, again, if followed, should help avoid the high debt burdens of our country. Again, it's been suggested that, Chinese involvement in Africa, undertaking these projects is causing African debt to escalate. So we need to interrogate that, because according to the plan, this should not be happening. In other words, they have a provision that will ensure that African debts are sustainable. Now, China has committed under the focal to support Chinese enterprises in utilizing their advanced equipment, technology, and expertise in standards and services to help African countries improve their infrastructure. This approach, again, if followed, will ensure that African countries benefit from acquisition and mastery of technology that they currently lack. Again, the issue of technology transfer has been mentioned. And it's that aspect that this plan is meant to, at least in theory, in principle, is meant to address. Now, under the focal plan, China and Africa are expected to explore and advance cooperation on projects promoting continental, regional, and sub-regional connectivity. Now, this is supposed to dovetail into the cross-border and trans-regional infrastructure development plans of Africa, while taking into consideration the real needs of African countries and economic and social returns of relevant projects. Now, it is well known that infrastructure connectivity across Africa is very poor, which increases the cost of undertaking economic and business activities on the continent, thereby retarding the growth of the continent. So, if this aspect, element of the plan, is also followed, it will help address a major development obstacle in Africa. Now, China has decided to formulate a China-Africa Infrastructure Cooperation Plan with the African Union under FOCA. Under the plan, China will support Chinese companies in participating in Africa's infrastructure development by way of investment, construction, operation, or through other models, with a focus on enhancing cooperation in various areas, including energy, transport, information, telecommunications, and cross-border water resources. Here also, continental, regional, and sub-regional connectivity of projects will be given a priority. Now, while China will provide, I think there was the issue of funding for the projects. Where will it come from? And the focal plan states that China will provide some funding for infrastructure projects. Other components of focal project seek to promote the utilization of Africa's own resources in more efficient ways. In principle, focal envisages that instead of, again, I'm quoting the focal document, it says instead of offering a blank check to Africa, the bulk of Africa's development will be internally sourced. The focal approach is geared to enabling Africa to leverage its own internal resources for development. China's main role will be to give Africa the ability to accelerate its economic progress by working together with Chinese companies to design, build, and operate vital infrastructure projects. Again, we need to measure the practice against the principle, because I heard from the case studies and other comments that maybe this is not exactly what is happening. So, well, as a think tank, CSOs in general, I think we need to highlight these things, so that the appropriate assessments and judgments can be made between the theory, the principles, and the practice. Now, already, the focal infrastructure plan is being rolled out in many countries, as the case studies presented by my colleague reviewed. Now, I want to emphasize that infrastructure is key for the post-COVID recovery and sustenance of African economies. And the focal infrastructure plan promises to play an important role in that regard. It will be important for African governments, CSOs, and other stakeholders to work together to leverage the plan fully to help catalyze the development of Africa. Thank you.
Please. Thank you very much, Dr. John Kwachi, Director of Research at IEA. Appreciate it. Now, very quick questions. Dr. John Kwachi will respond to them. Please put and let's make the questions as brief as possible. So Dr. Nakachi will respond, and it will take our questions. Any questions, please? Any questions? You wanted to ask a question earlier, but tie it into anyone for this one as well.
Please, can you give opportunity to
The ladies.
Yes.
Okay.
But they always talk about
Gender balance.
Yes.
Thank you. So agenda 2063, we are not waiting.
So the earlier it was more of a kind of a comment that was made concerning the need for when it comes to negotiation, African countries necessarily banding together before we can negotiate. I think that we can have what I call a pincer movement. We can do both. Yeah, we should do that too. At the level of the nation states, there's a need to strengthen capacity for negotiation. Because there are some things that obviously percolate at the level of the nation state. And there are things that are continental, regional, So we need to move along those tracks, I should say, when it comes to negotiations to be able to do. In any case, smaller countries than some of our countries in Africa engage the Chinese, Singapore, and the rest of it. It is not the size of the country, it is the fight in the country. It's not the size, right? The other point has to do with the presentation that was just made about principles and so on. I think we need to raise a very fundamental question. Are the Africans and the Chinese truly partners? And this I say because of COVID and what it generated in China regarding Black Africans in places like Guangzhou. I think on the basis of principle, we need to go back to the ways in which there's interaction between the Africans and the Chinese. Of course, in Africa, we have questions of xenophobia and all of that regarding the Chinese. And then in China itself, there seems to be what we call racism with Chinese characteristics. And we need to address these questions if the plans that we have are to go forward. Because if there's disrespect and there's the absence of proper recognition of either side, then from the get-go, we have a problem regarding, interaction at all. So I think I guess the chapter in the book that I talked about regarding racism and what I call, anti-Black Chinese racism. We have to look at it. It has a long history. It's about time we understood what is going on and how all of that frames the discourse. I mean, in his speech, he was talking about help Africa, help Africa. I mean, it's not an elevating discourse at all that partners would want to have. So this is what I want to read. And there's a book I just also did, which I think CSOs and the others should read, so we understand China properly.
Yeah.
And the history properly.
So let me respond to that. Oh,
yes.
No,
let me respond to that. I think we're on that.
Are you done from?
We'll answer that in the last.
Yeah, I think that you made some important points, but you seem to be taking us into some realms which are beyond the scope, of what you want to do today. You are taking us into the issues of.
Those are very important.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that today's seminar or symposium has its focus. If you are bearing up the focus, just slightly, but some of the issues you are raising, I don't have answers to them.
That's fair.
Yeah, yes. But there was the issue of, I think it's been said here again and again, African countries, negotiate as a group. And there's some benefits in that, because the focus is really about China and Africa. But I think that we should be able to do well as individual countries also. We are, I mean, we tend to speak about everybody Africa as if Africa is one country. But Africa is so huge. The individual countries in Africa, many of them are much bigger than the countries in Europe. Individual countries in Europe. Of course, if you are developed, you are not so much developed. If you pool your resources together, it's helpful. And then you have the stronger power. So I believe that's useful. But as individual countries, we should be able to determine our own priorities and negotiate for fair deals with the Chinese. Of course, the principles, that's what I said, these are the principles. I'm just highlighting them. I'm not even saying that I believe in them or support them, or I just want to bring them to your attention. And then we compare the principles with what is going on the ground and make sure that, I mean, they respect, the practice respects the principles. As a think tank, this is what we can do. Yeah, so those are the two.
Yes.
You can go on.
I'm going to take the last two questions to round out the 5 minutes. So please make it as brief as possible. Please.
Thank you. So just a quick introduction. It's actually not a question. My name is Leah Nelson. I'm from the African Center for Economic Transformation. They're friends who used to be down the streets. So we recently were tasked president to look into why other countries, much of the G20, are not providing as much financing as our Chinese colleagues are. And so we conducted a study on some of the infrastructure projects around the continent. And some of the two interesting things that we found and we recommended were that one, the outer mainland has a quality label, the PETA quality label, which sets in place, sort of guidelines for African countries in terms of infrastructure, quality, and financing. Now, since we're talking about financing, this is probably an area that perhaps we should be encouraging many of our governments to look into. The second thing that I think I've heard from the first presentation down to the second to the third is the lack of capacity of having professionals who can address some of these financing issues, to be able to speak to them, to negotiate them at the tables and all that. And so one of the things that we would like to propose in the coming years is a community of practice of African infrastructure professionals, financiers, people who have been involved in many of these projects, to share some of the practices that are going on in each of these countries, different regional projects, transboundary projects, the impact of the ACTA. And so I think I would love to invite our colleagues from COCAC and you as well to be part of this, so that we provide a solution to some of these challenges as opposed to maybe just discussing them. So I just wanted to share that as two potential solutions that we can tap, not only in Ghana, but for other African countries and for all the different stakeholders, from government to policy to private sector, who want to be involved.
Thank you very much. Final question. I think I have another. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to find out, the three speakers, you, the ambassador, and other folks. I want to find out how often do you engage the policy makers in this country? Because we have the politicians who decide on whatever is going to happen in the country. You bring these suggestions to them, and how do you do it? And in future, we are praying for COVID to vanish into the future. how are you going to engage the larger public for us to know? Because you hear comments like Chinese have taken all our business. Chinese have done that. So what can we do? Since we should see ourselves as partners, even though vision might say 37, how are we going to make sure it's 50-50? It's a win-win situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh.
Please, Doctor, before you come in, I'm the former chairperson of the
Former chair.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So the record should be-
Precisely. You are referring to Frederick Blade, not you, because you called him out. Thank you. Agenda 2063. Thank you very much. Dr. Pastor.
Yeah, the lady from SCT, I was trying to, you are inviting us to join with you to, I was trying to understand what role that you are expecting us to play. I was trying to understand that. Were you talking about funding from China versus others? Was that the issue?
Yes.
So there are two things. So the first one is that Alda NEPA, the PIDA quality label, is available to African countries they consult on financing for countries. So that's available, and it's a standard that is being promoted across the continent. Whenever countries come for financing, there are all these things, requirements that you need to meet for financing. And there are multiple labels that other governments prescribe, but African countries have come up with their own. And so it's important that many of our governments are aware of this standard label to ensure that they can access financing. So that was the first one. But the second one is that with all these challenges, there's a need for us to cross-fertilize information and share some of the best practices. For instance, in Kenya, as our gentleman mentioned. So I was inviting both you and perhaps the FOCAC team to be part of this knowledge sharing, this community of practice, so that we can sort of share this information.
But it's about financing.
It's everything infrastructure related. Everything.
So the financing
Is part of it.
Yeah. So financing, yes. If you are a developing country or continent, we certainly need to, we have to depend on others' resources to supplement your own. It's part of the development process. Africa is said to be the richest continent when it comes to resources. So why can't we, exploit our own resources? I'm not saying that external funding is not important. I'm saying that we don't seem to want to develop or exploit our own resources. And whatever resources that we exploit, we also give it away, to foreign investors and then keep very little of it to ourselves. Then the issue of bringing policies to attention of policymakers. Madam, I thought you know us, very, very well. We've been working with you for a very long time. And that's exactly what we try to do. But in this symposium, it's about that. We want to bring the FOCAC, issues to the attention of policymakers. That's why we invite the media here, so that they will go and disseminate whatever. But we ourselves also, we do a lot of advocacy on our own in trying to disseminate our research results and policy recommendations to policymakers. And in the process, we've been able to influence very important policy issues, including important legislation that have been passed. So that's, in a sense, that's what we do. You may not always be successful, but we have to, continue, I mean, to push. Eventually, you will get, if you get 50%, 60% of your policies accepted, you will say that you have achieved some success. So we do precisely that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please, round of applause for Dr. Pachi while we're around up. Appreciate that. And this is the end of the IEA China Symposium. We've been sharing and improving knowledge of the China-Africa Cooperation Forum program. Also, issues of strengthening processes to ensure mutual benefit of all parties involved, creating awareness and understanding of China's value addition through infrastructure initiatives and other areas of the continent. Also, acknowledging the challenges of cooperation and suggestions on the best way forward in dealing with all these challenges that have been identified. I want to thank you so much, and on behalf of the IEA, also invite other development partners to come on board, create such platforms for such meaningful engagements. My name is Alfred Otanseh. Let the conversation continue. Good afternoon to you.